Good morning. I'm going to talk today about work I've been doing with an interdisciplinary research team in partnership with a suburban town to understand the ecology and social dynamics of deer management in that community. The partnership emerged unexpectedly. It has some of the familiar benefits and challenges of community geography, and it's given our research team the chance to conduct applied, locally relevant research and also explore how uncertainty in data shape environmental controversies. In the talk today, I'll begin by providing some context and background on suburban deer and introducing the broader research project. I'll then describe the controversy over deer management in Carlisle and how we became involved in that. Through the presentation, I'll highlight some of those benefits and challenges that emerged from this partnership and discuss how we've been able to study our own intervention as a way of understanding how knowledge shapes environmental controversies. In recent decades, deer populations have grown dramatically in many northeastern suburbs where deer move easily between forest patches and residential backyards. They benefit from the absence of non-human predators, supplemented foods, patchworks of edge habitat, and limited hunting pressure. Though often welcomed members of this community, at high densities, deer in residential landscapes can become a concern for residents, state wildlife management, as well as municipal officials. At high densities, deer can transform forested ecosystems in dramatic ways and can also impact humans through property damage to agricultural properties as well as residential properties, deer vehicle collisions, and concerns about Lyme disease, though this relationship is contested and complex. Concerns about these impacts have prompted many suburban and urban municipalities to consider more actively managing deer through increasing hunting opportunities, culling programs, or non-lethal means of control. The discussions that surround these decisions are often contentious. And these are the circumstances that motivate our research. While much is known about suburban resident views on deer and hunting, as well as deer ecology, less is known about the politics of town-level management and decisions about how the resulting patchwork of management, which can vary from town to town, actually impacts deer populations. So our research team includes wildlife ecologists, human environment geographers, and socio-ecological modelers. And we are studying the socio-environmental dynamics of municipal deer management by studying 11 towns across New York State and Massachusetts. And in our work, we're trying to understand why some suburban communities choose to actively manage their deer while others don't, and how this patchwork of management that emerges shapes deer populations across those communities. So in each of our 11 towns, we're surveying vegetation, assessing relative deer populations, and investigating the politics of management. And this data then all feeds into an integrated model and decision support tool. In contrast to the ideal type of a community geography project, we designed this project from our own campuses, though with some input from wildlife agencies and town managers. While we've always been open to tailoring our research to the interests of project partners, we didn't plan to partner directly with our focal communities. So we selected these Massachusetts cases, including what's become our partner town, based on the needs of our research project and our own interests. Yet as our project was getting off the ground, a representative from the town of Carlisle contacted us and asked if we would help them understand deer dynamics in their town. Carlisle is a small, relatively wealthy suburban town in northwest of Boston. They had initiated a bow hunt on lands in the town in 2018, but those efforts to actively manage deer had broken down, and the discussions had become quite contentious. As I'll talk about later, the lack of local data on deer populations was a sticking point in this controversy. So the hunt was suspended pending more public discussion, and this deer committee member reached out to us in the hopes that we could help by providing data on deer populations. That initial email opened conversations with the town, between us and the town, about their needs, our plans, and if and how we could play an active role in their ongoing deliberation. And so through that, our work in Carlisle shifted to more of a partnership. And in that partnership, there are some of the familiar opportunities and challenges of community geography. We found an opportunity to produce data with community partners, and that was also of use to those project partners. And for us, some of our research design was already set, but we still have many spaces where we're able to adapt and shift along with community interests and desires. And so in doing so, we hope our conversation and the conversations that our data generate can shift the tone of the debate to promote a different kind of work through this controversy. The partnership also created new challenges for our research team. We now needed to navigate the politics of this heterogeneous community. Since our initial contact was from the town, we had to work hard to gain the trust of those who were resistant to or who opposed the hunt. The partnership has also created an opportunity to pursue questions about the role of uncertainty in data in environmental crises and controversies. And that's where the focus will be for the rest of this presentation. I'm going to start by talking about how the discussion and debate on deer management evolved in Carlisle, highlighting again how uncertainty and scarce data became important in that debate, and then the role that our interdisciplinary research team can play in this work. In the space of 5 years, from 2015 to 2020, the issue of what to do about deer management in Carlisle, or deer in Carlisle, evolved from an open inquiry to an acrimonious town debate that, in the words of one town official, is hurting the town because it sucks all of the oxygen out of more important issues. This official followed this public comment with the entreaty, "We need to do better as a town." So let's dive into this history a little bit. Concern about deer emerged as a town issue in 2015, when 2 town committees initiated efforts to understand the impacts of deer on the town and to explore the possibility of starting a bow hunt program on public land as a way to limit the population of deer. Over the next 2.5 years, the town formed a town-level deer committee. They invited outside experts to town meetings to talk about deer, and they collected management plans from nearby communities to consider if and how a program could work in their own town. They held public meetings and public input sessions, and they also held a non-binding vote to assess community support for the deer committee to implement a hunting program. As they gathered this public input, these early concerns centered around safety, fear of encountering hunters, and decreased quality of recreation during hunting times. Based on this public input, the deer committee administered a pilot bow hunt on 5 town properties in 2018. Following this pilot hunt, opposition began to grow. And in this period of opposition that went from 2018 to 2020, the tone of the public debate changed, and opposition to the hunt began to be framed around new issues. Opposition began to be framed around questions about expertise, about authority, about research and data. And their allegations emerged that the hunt itself was a special interest project. Town-level discussions deteriorated and began to include personal attacks. Multiple members of the deer committee resigned, and the town voted to suspend the hunting program in 2020. The question of how many deer live in Carlisle was a real sticking point in the debate. Opponents told us that they weren't closed to the possibility of hunting as an appropriate tool for management, but they felt there wasn't trustworthy data to support this decision. So let's see where the data came from. The Deer Committee based their hunt recommendations on information provided by the State Wildlife Agency, Mass Wildlife. And Mass Wildlife based their recommendations on rough regional estimates of deer that are based on limited harvest data in the region, and a one-time browse impact study on several properties in Carlisle. Based on this, they estimated deer numbers to be about 30 to 60 deer per square mile, which is well above the USDA preferred density of 6 to 18 deer per square mile. Opponents to the hunt contested these estimates in 2 ways. They argued that as an agency that earns revenue from hunting, Mass Wildlife had a conflict of interest here. And they noted the lack of local fine-scale estimates and data on deer populations themselves. And they questioned the extrapolation from the quick browse surveys. The Deer Committee, in contrast, in thinking and talking about this process, focused less on ecological benchmarks and data, and instead focused on the ways that they followed the administrative process. They trusted the guidance of agency experts and noted that they followed their charter and that the state has guidelines for circumstances like this. So in the debate that emerged, we see the opponents noting distrust in state wildlife agencies and the town process itself. Questions emerged about who can be trusted to do science and what that science should look like. We also see demands for local data growing, data that may be actually impossible to gather at the scale that people hope for. And we see both town officials and opponents of the hunt calling for more information and using this need for information as a way to avoid or extend the debate that had started to become so uncomfortable. And so this is where our research team has entered into the process. Invited by the town, we've also reached out to and made connections with those who opposed the hunt. Our wildlife ecology team is conducting fieldwork at several sites around the town, including many of those that were targeted for the volunteer bow hunt. We'll contribute local data on relative deer populations and impacts of the deer on vegetation. Our social science team is conducting interviews, holding focus groups, and administering 2 town-wide surveys to understand how and why the politics unfolded as they did, and if and how the insertion of this new local data can change the deliberation. We hope that this creates space for a different kind of discussion on deer management in the community. Our work on this project is ongoing. In addition to our core research, we've opened conversations with local K-12 teachers to try to build curricular materials that use the case study in the town controversy to help students understand human-wildlife challenges, the many different views that people hold, and to build citizenship through empathic deliberation skills. I told this story of the winding path of this relationship because it highlights a less intentional pathway towards community partnerships. And in pursuing this collaborative work, we've seen the relevance of insights from community geography, as well as participatory research in other related fields. The partnership itself has provided opportunities for us to understand and learn about the politics of knowledge and uncertainty in environmental controversies, and created its own natural experiment. I want to end with gratitude towards the many people who've collaborated on, participated in, supported, and funded our work. Thanks.